So here we are, the basics for extending your home. What I want to run through with you today is some of the planning rules, because that's not often explained to people clearly. I've got three excellent recent extensions that we have been out to tender for, and we've got costs back. And I'll show you each contractor's price so that you can see the kind of variability that we get. And also some timeframes, and then a little bit about us as well. But first of all, just a little bit about me and why you should believe what I say, I suppose. I've been working in extending houses, I suppose, for 22 years, more than half my adult life. I was given an opportunity at 19 to work in building control at North Tyneside Council. I then spent 10 years at 3 different local authorities, assessing all variety of quality of architectural drawings for compliance, and also going out to site and checking that the contractors were building in accordance with those drawings. That gave me my foundations. I started doing, I set up Acre Design, or rather started doing a kind of side hustle, I think the kids call it these days, about 14 or 15 years ago, before I realized that this could become a permanent job for me, and I've subsequently grown the company. We have 6 full-time staff, an excellent head of design called David, who's a chartered architect, and I still oversee a lot of the technical stuff because that's my background. But other than that, it's mostly just running the company, which is fantastic. I love it. I love speaking to customers. I still do all of the kind of initial Ask the Expert calls. That's the joy of running your own practice. You can pick and choose the bits that you enjoy. And whilst I enjoy all of it, I can't do everything. We take on somewhere between 4 and 7 projects a month. And like I say, 22 years working in this industry and running Acre for 12 years, I feel confident in the information that I'll be putting across to you today. So the 3 things that I hope you'll get from it today is, a real understanding of what is permitted development rules and where the nuances lie, where the creepy crawlies and the technical guidance for permitted development are. A lot of people know the headlines, but not necessarily the kind of backstory. Some realistic timeframes, the design process and the build process, when you can expect to be living in your beautiful new home. We also will look into those 3 worked examples. And yeah, I just hope to give you, in an hour, more than most customers from working in building control. A lot of them felt a little in the dark. They just had to implicitly trust their design team that they were getting the right options. And I've always had the belief that it's fairly easy to lay everything out at the start, so that when we're having discussions through the design phase, and we're developing the design and understanding costs and timeframes, and that information is easily absorbed when presented well to the customers, so that they know where we're at, know when they can expect things to be done, and kind of understand the process. It would be lovely if I could give you confidence to start your project. And when you do decide to start, fingers crossed, because of this, you'll think, well, I'll just book in a call with Alistair to have a little discussion first. If it's a project that we can help you with, then I'll talk about our starting process that we use with each of our customers, called the Needs and Options Review. Nice, easy introduction into working with one another, relatively low cost, but give you some great insight and options there. Now, in 22 years, and in half of that in building control, or just under half of that, I've kind of earmarked the areas where I think most projects go awry to begin with, I suppose. The most important stage in the project is not the builder starting on site, or getting your planning permission. I genuinely believe, for me, it is the very, very first seeds of the ideas. Committing to a layout too early, before you've developed and understood what your options are, understood the implications both structurally, on cost, on planning, on building control, on flow, on light. Commit to a layout too early, or something I see regularly, the customers come to me and say, we want a 6 meter by 3 meter rear extension. And I think, okay, well, what do you hope that that will achieve for you? And what it will achieve is ultimately what the brief is, and then our job is to work on different ideas and ways of how we might be able to achieve that, obviously within a specified budget, and obviously compliant with any planning rules and building control rules for that matter. And another thing that, again, you'll have seen every week on George Clark or Grand Designs is they fall in love with the design, the clients, that is, our customers fall in love with the design. They don't really know how much it's going to cost until you've done your technical drawings, structural calcs, and then you're out to tender. That's the first site that some customers will see. Fingers crossed, we're on budget. And then everyone gets a little deflated when they come back 20, 30, 50, 100% too high, and we have to rationalize, or one has to rationalize the design, and you're cutting back from a design that you've fallen in love with. So we try to bring the budget process as far forward as is reasonably practical to get accurate figures early on, giving the customers a full understanding of the options regarding layouts, a clear indication of budget early on, and planning considerations and constraints as well. I think that's really important. A kind of initial appraisal of where we feel or where your design firm feels could be developed, working within those parameters to begin with is a really useful exercise. And once you understand planning rules, which I'll run through shortly, and once you understand those kind of areas that could be developed and why they couldn't be developed, again, it makes the conversation so much more fruitful with your designer, because you've got your understanding and you're not having to just trust you've got that knowledge. Now, all of these things, if you don't take the pragmatic time at the start and you don't, dare I say, allow your designer to enough time to be able to work through those things rigorously, it does mean that design decisions can get revisited. And the further later through the process that designs get revisited, or oh, still no sound, people? Okay. Let's just go on to... Can everybody hear me if I change my microphone? Anybody? Everybody? Anybody hear me still? This is it. Okay for me. Great. Okay. I'm on the laptop microphone now. It's not the best quality, but obviously my expensive wireless one is causing problems. Was everyone following okay up to that point? Just a thumbs up or an okay would be great. Yeah. Okay. That sounds cool. I'll just carry on then. We've got a lot to get through, so hopefully that the sound is okay. Both have been fine. Maybe it was an issue with the individual speakers. Thank you very much, guys. Okay, I'm glad you're all following. So yeah, early stage stuff, so important. Really, the sandbox time, it's cheap to throw ideas around it, sketches and floor plans and ideas, and some of them will work and some of them will just absolutely not. And what might be a beautiful, brilliant, incredible idea for you might be a terrible idea for someone else. And I think the best place to just flood the process with ideas is at the start, and that's what we want to do. We're not asking for you to trust us. We're just wanting to show you the spinning plates on any design, and then ultimately you'll understand. Okay, I'm going over this too much, I think. So, but just one final thing, the later in the process that you revisit designs, the more it costs. If you come to us and say, we want to change this once we've done technical and structural calculations, it can be quite expensive to completely unpick all those technical designs to redo them. Heaven forbid you make a change on site, because the builder will just, it'll push things back. It might take an extra week, and then his electrician you don't have that slot anymore, so you need to wait another 3 weeks, and every time you're paying for all these things. So the design process is where the magic happens, but it's also where you're protected from foreseeable design edits later. Okay, let's get on to planning. Permitted development. Has got a lot of headlines, and it's a fantastic thing. Thank goodness the government down in Westminster has wrestled some of this from the local planning authority, because the planners, they're a conservative bunch. They don't want to see much changed, but over the course of a few different governments, they have allowed us you to do things to your home without it being passed in front of a planning officer or a town and country planner, whatever they call themselves these days. So it allows development without the need for planning. Couple of caveats: you have to use matching or similar materials. So if you have a brickwork house, the extension must be brickwork, okay? Or if you have white window frames, this is a nuance that's, when you need to be careful. Each local authority deems this different. But if you say wanted to have a black bifolding door, they may say, well, actually, it's white window frames on your house, so for permitted development, you have to have white. Similar with roofing materials and other bits and pieces like that. I'll talk about the different sizes and dimensions that you can go for in a minute. The planning department must use your permitted development rights as a fallback position when assessing a full planning application. Okay, so if you can go 3 meters out the back of your house under PD in brickwork, like I said, and you want to go 3 meters with render, they'll say, well, look, the fallback position is a brickwork extension. It's out the back, so therefore we would accept it, even if ordinarily it might not be approved, but because you've got those permitted development rights, that's your fallback position. And we use fallback position a lot because it's just really useful. It gives us extra creativity for those that are willing to make a subsequent planning application and they don't want just something boring and a mono-pitch roof with matching materials, which is fine, but it's for the same money you can get something a little more interesting, I would say. But I would say that. You don't have permitted development rights for conservation areas, listed building flats, or areas of outstanding natural beauty. A couple of other caveats: any extension work, particularly garden rooms, because you can build quite large garden rooms, not affixed to your property, but you must not build on more than 50% of the land around the original house. So if you already have an extension and you want to build another extension or a garden room, you can't include the extension, or you have to include the extension as part of your allocation already being used up. You still will need building regulations approval. The building regulations do not care how big or what size an extension is or where it's placed. They want to know how deep the foundations are going to be, where the drainage runs are, how much insulation is going in, is it going to be safe for people to use, is it going to be energy efficient, as well as a whole host of other rules and regulations around fire safety, structure, insulation, like I'd said already. So you still need building regs drawings. You still will need party wall notices if you're building within 3 meters of the party wall or a fence line. And these building regs drawings, in their most basic form, they are the instruction manual for the contractor to build to, but also to price from. Now, these building regs drawings, I actually have a set to show you later. They can simply prove compliance, or they can be developed, as we always do because of my background, into a much more developed set of contractor drawings to actually build from. Ultimately, what we want to do is, with all the work that we do and go into the drawings, we want to try to reduce as greatly as possible any risk to our customers, and we do that by making sure that everything's super clear. And I have assessed thousands of architectural drawings, and I know what works, what the builder sees, and how they interpret them. And ultimately, the clearer you are in the drawings, the sharper the builder's pencil can be, because he sees a good set of drawings and he says, I know exactly what's happening here. I've got full faith that this is exactly how to build it. If they take a 5% contingency off their build fee, that covers our fees. So it's a very easy sell, that one, I would say. Now, if you ever do come to sell, and most people won't once they've extended their home or they've redeveloped it, because they'll just be so fantastically in love with it that they'll go to other people's houses and they'll say, this is not as good as mine. I have that feeling a lot. I go to a lot of unextended houses and I come back to my little extended house and I think this is just perfect. I love this. This is better than a house that is twice the cost. The houses that I see regularly. It really is a fantastic thing, building an extension or refurbishing a house. A bit of hard work, but many years of great joy coming home to it. We do always advise, if you do come to sell, that we apply for a lawful development certificate from the planners to say what we're doing is covered under permitted development. Okay, so just a bit of paper. It doesn't actually go to a case officer, it just goes to the validation team, and then they will just check against some criteria. Are the matching materials? Does it comply with some of these next images I'm going to show you? If yes, let's get going. Approve it. Certificate of lawfulness through, and that usually takes around 4 weeks rather than a planning approval, which can take 8. Okay, so this is a real core outline on sorry, not a core outline. It's like the condensed version of the technical guidance. All of these images are in the permitted development technical guidance. We're going to cover porches, side extensions, single-story rear extensions, two-story extensions, which we don't do a lot of, loft conversions, which is so important, so super important. Prior approval applications, which is like somewhere in between permitted development and full planning, and then outbuildings as well. Although I'm not sure I've got a slide on outbuildings, but it's not complicated. I can explain it to you. First things first, your house has a principal elevation. It is usually the elevation that affronts a highway. If you're on a corner plot, you have 2 principal elevations. Most people have 1. If you're detached, it's a bit more vague because you're set back from the road. It's a bit more flexible there. But generally speaking, as they're conservative, the planners, they want to try to keep the street looking as close to original as possible. That's the main thing from planning. In my view, that plus impact on neighbours are the 2 main things. They allow certain changes to the principal elevation, mainly porches. Coming forward from a principal elevation can be difficult. It can be done, and I'll explain how in slides yet to come. Porches. You are allowed to build a footprint of 3 square meters. That's the external footprint, okay? You need to maintain 2 meters to the front boundary, and it's not allowed to be more than 3 meters in height. Now, what that does is it means that any changes to the front of a property are kept relatively minimal, and you can still read the street as it was originally built, albeit there's sporadic small porches being added. Again, matching or similar materials. They like it to be a lot of glass as well, just to see through it, to see the structure behind. And anything bigger than those needs full planning. I don't want to put people off going for full planning. In fact, I want to encourage it because your architectural team with good experience will be able to offer sound advice. But if you are on a relatively uniform street, coming forward of that principal elevation can be tricky. In fact, it's more than tricky. I'll be honest. It's almost just like a straight no. They want, unless you've got a staggered street or large detached properties of varying styles, anything uniform, they want to try to keep it uniform. Right. So that's porches. Side extensions, single story only. No more than half the width of the original house is a big one. This is, again, the permitted development rules. We can go wider, but it's going to need planning. It can't be forward of the principal elevation, matching or similar materials, which is just across the board for permitted development. There are some height restrictions, mostly on the boundary, but that's not usually an issue. And a really key one that is often forgotten is it's not allowed to touch any existing or proposed extension. So if you already had a rear extension here and you wanted to build here, if it touched that rear extension, that would flag the need for a planning application. It would more than likely be approved, but it's just the technical guidance for permitted development here that we're talking of. So this is fine because it doesn't touch less than half the width of the house. Your rear extension is off the main body of the house. We'll talk about that when we come to rear extensions. This does need planning approval. Okay, single-story rear extensions. We do a lot of these. We replace a lot of conservatories with beautiful open plan spaces. The extension out the back has to be off the main dwelling house. It's not allowed to come across the back of, say you've got a garage with maybe a utility at the back of the garage. If it comes all the way across there, it needs a planning application. Again, likely to get approved, but just so that you're aware, it needs a planning application. If we have a staggered rear elevation, you can have 3 meters off the back of every kind of projection. If you wanted to do this would be a no, because that would be a 9-meter rear extension, which is too much. 2-story extensions, we haven't done many of them.
and I think mostly it's because this 3 and this 7 is usually you don't usually have an extra 7 meters to the back of the boundary. Detached properties maybe, but if you're in a detached property, this would get planning anyway. Like I say, we don't do a lot of these. We don't feel the need to go down the permitted development route here. I think it would be closely looked at, but there is some provision for it. Only to the rear, detached homes, and again, room to each boundary. But again, depending on your circumstances, we could have a look and see. I would only go for this if we felt that it would not get a full planning application. And again, that is an important distinction because it's very valid for loft conversions. We have to use permitted development for certain types of lofts, which we'll come on to. Probably now. Yes, now. Great. Loft conversions. An incredible use of that space up there. Couple of caveats again. We're not allowed to raise the height of the existing ridge, and any dormer is not allowed to be higher than the original ridge. We're not allowed to put dormers on the front elevation. They have to be Velux or roof lights only. If there is examples of dormers on the front elevation in your street, you may well get planning approval for it, but we couldn't cover it under permitted development. The maximum roof volume, I forgot that was from the last time as well, volume increase is 40 cubic meters on terraced homes. Now, volume increase is the cubic meters of, say, this dormer. It's not the space within the existing loft that you're converting. It's this red box where you calculate that additional volume or that additional volume. And it's 50 cubic meters for semi or detached homes. And if your home already has an extension, that eats into that cubic meterage allowance as well. We need to do a calculation when we do these dormers to show that we're within 50. And we're quite clear early on with images kind of like this about how big we think our customers could go. Again, part of that needs an options review. Again, they must be matching or similar materials. Phased applications work well. We go in for permitted development with a permitted development compliant solution, and then we go in for an additional application just to change the material of the outside. We say, look, we've got a dormer, here it is. Now we just want to change it from slate to cladding. But that's the process we have to go through if you're desperate for cladding over slate, for example. We can use cladding. The wording in the permitted development technical guidance is that the materials of the dormer must be matching or similar. If you have like a deep red concrete tile, you can't hang those on the dormer, so we would go in with a deep red cladding, and we get that through fairly regularly. If you're thinking about a loft conversion, do get up into that loft. We're really looking for 2.6 meters from the top of the ceiling joists up to the underside of the rafter, because by the time we've strengthened the floor, insulated, put a likely ridge beam to allow us to take out all of the structure internally, that can drop your head height by around 40 centimeters. So you end up with a 2.2 loft, which is still comfortable, unless you're 6'2" or 3 or above, in which case it can feel a little tight. Another great alternative, which, if you bought a wreck and it's a fixer-upper, is to just drop those ceilings on the first floor by just 20 centimeters perhaps, and then you end up with the two kind of bedroom accommodation floors with a similar head height, which I think works well, and it's not that disruptive. A couple of days of dust, but there we are. That's another idea, an option. Oh goodness, we're at past already. I like prior approval applications. We don't use them enough, but you can do some cool stuff. You can build, so long as your neighbors don't object. So you need to have a quiet word with a bottle of wine in hand, I think. You can go, it's crazy, 8-meter rear extensions for detached homes, 6-meter rear extensions for terraced or semi-detached. The same height restrictions as permitted development. And if there is no objections from your neighbor, plus a couple of other checks, it will be automatically approved. So prior approval is that kind of the line between full planning and permitted development where they do a couple of extra checks, but they're not necessarily looking at it as closely as they would a full planning application, which we'll come on to next. If there is objections, the council will assess and most likely reject. Another fun one, which I just don't think enough people know about, is you can add a whole extra story to your home. Yeah, under prior approval. You just need to make sure that the fenestrations, your windows kind of line up, same materials, same roofing material, but you get a whole extra 3 bedrooms up in some properties. It's not used enough, and I think it will become more prevalent as planning gets chewed up as it is at the moment, just taking a long time to get approvals through. So that's fun. So permitted development, the conclusion is it's very useful, of course. I would like to think that we don't necessarily want to limit the design to simply comply. I would like to use it as a fallback position, but if you're looking for a cost-effective basic extension, PD is a good way of going. The planners will consider the PD fallback. So again, we use that almost every week when we're coming up with our ideas. Oh, this is the one thing I didn't tell you about lofts. Let me just go back real quick. Loft conversions. A flat roof dormer has to be done under permitted development because it will not be approved under full plans. All right, so you have to comply with the 50 cubic meters. You have to go in for a certificate of lawfulness. You can do this HIP where your roof comes down to gable and then build a dormer, and we can often get those through within 50 cubic meters still, but we cannot affix this kind of work with something on the ground that needs a planning application. We need to submit 2 separate applications. The local authority do not like flat roof dormers, but because central government has allowed it under permitted development, that's why you see so many of them. But we must comply with permitted development rules for lofts if you wanted a dormer window to the back. So yeah, like I say, we can often split between PD for the loft, full planning for anywhere else on the house. A 3 square meter porch is quite small, and loft conversions with those dormers do need to be covered under permitted development. Okay. Planning. It's not that complicated. It really isn't. But there's some big kind of ticket items that we need to run through. Impact on neighbours, really important to the planning department. The impact on the street scene, which we've kind of covered off already, I think, fairly well. Design quality, scale and massing, and subservience. So we'll talk about that. And then other technical constraints, flood risk, heritage, ecology. Those are the kind of main drivers on the planners when they're looking at these applications. For residential extensions anyway. I mean, they may look at parking and they may look at all sorts of other things. They've got a whole list as long as your arm of things that they can ask for, but these are the main things that they're considering. Okay, so when we're thinking about maintaining a street scene, the planners want extensions to the side, if going 2-story, to be subservient in matching materials. They do not want different materials, different window sizes. This is just the front elevation, and you can see this represented here as well. Something set back, a little subservient, rather than this, which is flush and flat roofed. This, they think, looks better than this. I'm inclined to agree on this basic form. Additionally, they don't want, like we were saying about coming forward of the principal elevation, they're also looking at the street scene, right? So incongruous extension beyond the line of the street scene would be no, but something matching roof, matching materials, not breaking these lines here, still subservient would be acceptable. So they want to keep that street looking like it was when it was first built, but there is some areas that you can develop. And I feel like I've just done that image and that image. Okay, let's just wait for this to go away. Down at the bottom, you can see something called the terracing effect, where if they did allow people to build more than half the width of their original house or right up to the boundary, and they allowed it to be flush and the gable ended, you'd end up with something called the terracing effect, and you'd end up with a street of semi-detached properties that were meant to have nice views between them and a sense of openness becoming enclosed and becoming a terrace. So they want to try to avoid that. think that's the same image, isn't it? Oh, sorry about that. I must have swapped that out by accident. It wasn't like that the last presentation. Porches, again, you're breaking up the street scene here. You can have something nice and small, but this is going to be a no-go. You're moving too far away from the sister property. When you have a semi-detached property, your sister property does hold quite a lot of sway with the planning department. They don't want these to end up being completely different. You'll see ones where people have painted the whole, or they've put in black windows and the other side's got white. They can't control everything, but what they can control, they do control, if that makes sense. Similarly, this kind of roof running across the front of the bay over the door is not usually something that they would find acceptable. Okay, so that's the street scene, the need for subservience, the matching materials, the similar form, and then coming forward of the principal elevation. Another important aspect for the planning department is the householder planning guidance. In the householder planning guidance, sorry, is the impact on the neighbors. You'd be this person here if your neighbor built this right on the boundary. It's overshadowing, privacy is lost. You used to have the sun coming onto this part of the garden, and it's just not cool, and the neighbor would object. This is what you would see, and so they say, look, if you're going to build near a boundary, you have to kind of comply with this 45-degree rule. You're not allowed to kind of at that angle cover over more than half of the nearest habitable window, so long as that habitable window is the only source of light. If you have two windows in the same space, the center line between this edge and this edge is the 45-degree angle. But you can see here again examples. Nothing too deep, nothing too tall. They were happy with flat roof, but anything like this is going to have too big an impact on your neighbor there. And yeah, you can kind of see where that development zone would be. So two-story extensions to the rear can be tricky unless you build them right in the middle. And then you need to just make sure that you've got offset distances between the house at the bottom of the garden. If you've got quite close houses and you build windows that become very close to one another, privacy could be lost again. So that's the main impact on the neighbors. It's building big structures on the boundary, reducing privacy, both to the property, to the rear and to the side. And yeah, they're pretty stringent on that. Well, I say stringent. Remember, we've got permitted development rules after all, haven't we? This is the full planning application guide, and you can see here it says no to flat roof dormers, and that is just something that they won't accept. So we have to get them through permitted development. They say box dormers can make a house look top heavy and are discouraged even on rear elevations. Same with the hip to gable, but both of these things you can do under permitted development. So I think I've probably explained that well enough. Loft conversions. It can look top heavy from the outside, the few times that you're looking in your garden back at it, but for me, the amount of extra bedroom space, the views from the top, the brand new hotel luxury ensuite walk-in wardrobe space that you can get from a loft conversion, I think it's a price worth paying personally. And there's plenty of things that we can do to make them look, fantastic without it looking kind of too cheap and cheerful, just by clever use of the soffits or the fascias or the guttering or the cladding or the window types, Juliet balconies, some a protective barrier or some interesting glazing options. And again, when we do some mood board work with our clients, we show them some nice little design elements that we could still get through permitted development, but it's going to make your dormers really stand out. So that's permitted development planning. Let's talk about some costed examples. This is example number 1. And this is in Morpeth. And this is a CGI image that we've done in-house. We've got a brilliant photo visualizer called May who produces all of these. This is a very big but failing conservatory, too hot in winter, too cold. Sorry, too cold in winter, too hot in summer. Separating doors between the two. It never gets used. The clients came to us and said, "I don't know what good it is. I'm not a big fan of conservatories anyway." So we came up with this lovely design. Again, keeping it low on the boundary, and then this kind of asymmetrical roof. Interesting cladding. It's lovely. I think it's going to be a great addition. This is what the inside will look like when it's completed later this year. This is what they've gone for. This kind of low-level television, which I think is really cool, and then the workbench behind. This kitchen is remaining. So these prices down here don't include the kitchen or flooring or tiling or landscaping. This is the supply of these. The fitting is included. So there's some minor alterations to the kitchen, which was detailed. That's been priced for, but the client has to supply the kitchen bits and pieces. Same with the flooring. It's priced in to fit, but the client has to supply. Same with tiling and landscaping again. We showed the area of hard landscaping. Contractors priced in to lay it, but the client has to supply the kind of finished materials. These are the 4 contractors. And as you can see, we do a very thorough tender analysis. This is just the totals. So we were very pleased with this tender return because the more accurate, the more detailed, the more clear your drawings are, the closer you can get the tenders. This was between 88,000 and 91. So, that's probably 5% difference. We sometimes see a bit bigger. In fact, I probably got bigger to show you today. But around about 105 to 110,000 was that extension finished. We've got some nice vaulted ceilings. We've got some roof lights in there, including the landscaping. But yeah, a lovely extension plan. Relatively straightforward structural opening here. We're not installing beams 5 or 6 meters. Access is very good, so again, they didn't have to put a premium on that. We got some good contractors on this one. Well, we've got great contractors on our tender list anyway. But yeah, that one is that. So there you go. That's a nice job over in Morpeth. This next project, I think, is absolutely beautiful. Again, Forest Holidays. We just got all the tenders back for this one. Well, not back, but probably a month ago. We've been working with the chosen bidder, the chosen contractor, just to firm up some provisional sums that they put in, mostly for the pergola, the landscaping, and a little bit of flooring. But yeah, no, this is stunning, this one. So this was a conservatory again. They did use it as the dining room, but it was cramped. They came to us with a pretty healthy budget of around 150,000, and we worked early with them. We came up with some concept designs. We had it priced by our quantity surveyor before we went too far. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. We showed them 3 or 4 different layouts that we thought would work, extending a little bit more here, a bit more there, different ways of achieving the client brief. We had a meeting to discuss that and the planning appraisal. We then subsequently produced some concept designs, which they were floored by, which is always just a lovely thing to happen, and it happens fairly regularly, thank goodness, because of our process. But this was a rear extension, replacing the conservatory, beautiful apex glazing, and then a utility living room to the right. I've got the floor plan to show you. So this is the pergola. This is where the sun hits of an evening. So it was important to make sure we got that in. And then this is what the inside looks like. So this is their new dining space, feature scissor truss, that apex glazing running around with some nice timber paneling detail running down onto a nice bench seat, and then internally a secret door into the utility, and then this inbuilt media wall here. Now, a lot of firms, from my experience in building control, will just leave you with a finished plastered shell. We do offer this internal fit out detailing, which I just think is, it's just so important. You wouldn't get anything like this if it was left to the builder to decide, and it certainly wouldn't be priced in. So the internal fit out drawings are part of our construction documents, which you're not obliged to purchase from us at all, but we really think it makes the inside look as good as the outside. You'll get these photorealistic renders alongside those construction fit out drawings, and yeah, it's just going to be a great space, completely changed from what they had. So they spent their life in this tiny little snug, and the sofa was most of this room, and then their kitchen. and then they had the stairs running up, little office, and then this living space. And what we're proposing to do is open up. So you come in, this is an incredible dining table. This is something like 2.6 meters. I mean, it's not going to be 8-seater. It can easily seat 10 or 12. And then this is all going to be vaulted with the scissor truss and the Velux roof lights. And then this will all be open into this snug. And that's that utility wall with that hidden TV unit. And then through here is going to be this utility room slash yoga studio, because there's a television there, and we've made sure that this is wide enough for our client to do their yoga in there as well. So you can see here the totals came back at around 150. This was a lower bid, which we actually discounted it because it was quite a lot lower. We felt these two were the market rate. This was a smaller contractor, so we would expect his price to be less. But he was also very busy, and we felt, well, it's the client's decision at the end of the day, but these other two were much larger firms. I would say more reliable in that they had the capacity to make sure that the project was pushed through. They weren't reliant on one person. So let's just say that that's £150,000. And, without some of this apex glazing and these Velux windows, perhaps move the extension in without the window seat, or we don't go to town necessarily on the inside. We could easily shave 20 or 30% off that extension. And that kind of leads me on to my point that if people come to us with a budget and a brief about how they want to live in their property, it is our job to show them ideas and ways of achieving that. If we don't have a budget, then we'll hit the brief, but no one really knows until too late whether or not it's achievable. And if you come to us with kind of a pragmatic solution, an instilled idea of what you want. Again, we're happy to oblige, of course, but it's much better if you say, the kitchen's too tight, or the kids are growing up, or we need a space to work from, as well as I'd love to have a utility so that I can bring the dog in from the beach. Those kinds of things are really gold dust for us to understand how we might be able to achieve that, because you've seen planning. I've not even touched on the building regulations, but there's a lot that goes in, a lot of training in mine and my team's experience that will allow us to come up with solutions that are far better than someone who hasn't done this 1,500 times could come up with. I don't mean to sound derogatory at all. We want to understand how you want to live. We want to help, and we want to be to give as much of our experience to every project as is possible. And if people come to us with fixed firm ideas, then it doesn't allow us to do that. And our whole process is built around showing you options anyway, so you might as well use it, right? Cool. So that's 100, then 150. Here's our 200 one. This is in Woolsington. This is a beautiful big house. The extension is this covered but glazed kind of pergola, outside dining area, the landscaping. This is already an extension, but we're really taking most of it down, replacing this roof, installing a lot more glass. And then this flat roof section over here is going to be their office. We're also doing work to the front. This is an extension. This is a new feature entrance. And again, you can see those glazed sections running across there, which is, I just think, going to be beautiful. We can refine any design to anyone's budget, of course, within reason. But the clients came to us with a healthy budget, and they came to us with a brief about needing an office space, ideally wanting to be able to stay out of the rain if they're out in the garden, making a bigger feature of the front. That price does include the replacement of all the windows and quite a lot of internal works upstairs. But again, this is a bigger variety than we would have liked on the prices, but we were somewhere between 190 and let's say 210, and we'll just say that this one was an anomaly, that we went back and found out that this contractor had priced in something that they had spoken about on site, which no one else had. So that brought it down about 20,000, but it was still high. But then, including your VAT, we're talking about 200,000 there. I should say, actually, strangely enough, none of these projects do include an entire new kitchen. Kitchens can be bought from anywhere from 15 up to £100,000. So just bear that in mind if you think that your project might need a new kitchen. But again, like it said, could we have got them the square meterage More cheaply, of course. Did we work? But we worked to the budget at the start and satisfied the brief, and we made sure that there was enough. Or rather, with what was remainder of the budget, we managed to include some nice architectural elements, and those are the things that square meterage you're proud of. But something like this front porch or this covered area, that'll elicit comments from friends and family. And every time you walk under there, you'll think, I'm glad we just spent a little bit more and got something a bit special. Because, once you've done this, like I say, you're not going to move. And the last thing you want to do is regret not spending a little bit more on a nice little detail. But again, I've got a dog in this fight, so I'll leave that with you. Cool, we've done that already. Okay, timeframes is the final thing. We're at about 10 to 8, which is great. So there's going to be plenty of time for questions at the end, I think. Like I said, sorry, these are, let's just say month 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. The needs and options review is our first step. Low commitment, relatively low cost. It gets us moving. Once we've done the needs and options review and we understand the project in much more detail, we're able to then issue you out a fee proposal, and that fee proposal will have 3 different service levels. It'll have a basic service level, just design and approvals. It'll have our kind of main service level 2, which will include 3D visuals. It'll include us going out to tender on your behalf. It'll include enhanced technical drawings, and level 3 includes a whole bunch of extra stuff dependent on some of the choices that you make when we send you our initial questionnaire. Let's say that we agree a fee proposal on a service level. We then move on to preparation, which is desktop checks, as well as preparation of the existing 3D model of your existing house. Concept work, again, it's not necessarily 2 weeks straight, but we need to schedule in that work. And then I'll show you what happens in this little section here shortly, just that's why I've coloured it red. Once we apply for planning permission, you're 8 weeks for approval. Some clients for complex or jobs where there is some risk for planning would rather wait for planning to be approved and not incur the costs of the technical drawings. That does delay you by about 2 months. So if you're keen to get started in 2027, in all likelihood, we'll need to move straight on with the technical drawings because we can't go out to tender until the majority of those are complete. Because the technical drawings are what the builders price from. We'll then have a couple of weeks negotiating with the builder, firming up some of those provisional sums, answering questions, working with our customers, and then we'll get that booked in. With the contractor, deposit will be due a couple of months before building work starts, and then the availability of contractors tends to be 3 to 6 months. So from today, if we started the needs and options review, and we're a couple of weeks out from starting, maybe 3 weeks out from starting another needs and options review, let's just say 6 months for the design phase to get a builder booked in, and then potentially 3 months for the builder to start, which takes you into kind of late spring next year. Not to say that some of these things can't be reduced if you guys work quickly with us. It's not usually the delays aren't usually with us, they're usually with the planning department or the structural engineer waiting for them to do their work, or the client to give us some feedback or their availability for a meeting. But generally you're looking at 6 months for the design phase. And then, like I say, kind of 3 months for the contractor to get that booked in. But if we get the early stages right, we do the needs and options properly, we have good, meaningful discussions early on, it really does help with the speed of the project through, because there's less dithering, there's less waiting and wondering. Dithering's not the right word, but sort of acclimatizing to certain design ideas and understandings, because we've explained things so clearly in the early stages. So like I say, 9 months would take you to, I'd expect April, May, probably June, but it's not going to be February, I don't think, unless it's a small project and perhaps we just do one of our more basic service levels where we can get things through a little faster. I hope this is clear. I think it's as clear as I can make it. What happens after the needs and options review? You accept the fee proposal. We have an onboarding meeting, which we actually issue you out a presentation. We then issue out the concept designs with a quantity surveyor's price. Now, it's indicative at the moment because we haven't got structural calculations, but we want as early as possible for you to have a lovely set of concept designs based on a floor plan that you've already kind of agreed and some mood board images that we've kind of worked through with you. Concept designs, again, more often than not, clients are bowled over. They look at the price, they're like, yeah, it's on budget. It's what you said. We have the concept review meeting. We'll issue any updates to the design. We'll have another meeting. Are you happy? No. We just keep doing this loop 2 or 3 times, depending on the service level. When you're happy with the designs, we will submit for planning and then we'll move on to the technical drawings. We'll have a review of the technical drawings. Are you happy? No. We'll do an update. We'll have a meeting. Are you happy? We'll do an update. We'll have a meeting. So that doesn't go on more than 2 or 3 kind of loops. Usually it's one for the technical drawings because a lot of it's really technical and doesn't mean a whole bunch to people who don't work in technical drawings, but it's good to get the sign off. If you go with level 3 with our fit out drawings, remember the images I showed you of those lovely, that scissor truss and that wall paneling or tiling areas or fitted cabinetry or just the inside fit out of the drawings, not interior design. We're not choosing colors. We're not choosing soft furnishings. But everything else is detailed. Now that just means that you end up with a better result on the inside, but you also then don't have to have those discussions with the contractor because there's a tiling drawing. Where am I tiling in the utility? Look at the drawing. What flooring am I laying? Look at the drawing. That's why we do these drawings, is so that ultimately you can just pass that information to the contractor. They price it up and they build it and they leave you alone to get on with your lives, and they can finish so much faster. And the stress of what do they call it? Decision fatigue. If you have plans that only show an empty plastered shell. Some people are keen to take on that mantle and they don't want to spend a couple of £1,000 having every room, flooring, tiling, skirting, doors, all detailed out. They would rather make those decisions, but I obviously think it's well worth the money or else we wouldn't offer it. Either way, once we've done the internal fit out or we've done the technical drawings, we go out to tender, we issue the tender, we receive that, we have a tender meeting with you. You happy to choose a contractor? If yes, then we can move forward with contracts. And sometimes if no, there can be a little communication here. But the main steps are pre-concept, concept, develop design, technical, internal fit-out drawings if you choose that, and then the tender phase. Now, that's as simple as I can make it. But for us, it looks like this. This is all. I'm a very process-driven person. I love the architecture, but I don't do a huge amount of that because we've got great technicians and a great architect heading up the design. But I do want to make sure that every customer gets a really concise, consistent experience. And I'm sure that's being picked up from everything that I've been saying. But we have standard letters, standard emails, giving all the information. We've got checks and balances built in through this process. And we have one of these for level 1, level 2, and level 3 on our wall in the office, and you'll see it. I tinker with it occasionally, but Rebecca, our office manager, who is really my boss, she runs the show. She will put up a fight if something's working very well and I want to change it. So she manages to quell my want for improvement and never-ending continuous improvement. But yeah, I like the way that we operate. It seems to be working fairly well. We've been going 12 years, and I think something like 90% of businesses fail within the first 2 or 3 years. Anyway, I digress. The needs and options review, I've explained it a few times tonight, mentioned it a few times. We do it because it's a big leap for a customer to go from, I've just watched a home extension workshop, or I've seen their social medias and now they're expecting to work with me for 6 months. That's a big commitment. So we've built this really valuable little step called the needs and options review. And its goal is to get us working together, but it's really also about exploring what's possible before you commit to an expensive design phase. We want to compare a couple of different layout options, some different massing options, a mood board, just to find out, like I'd say, understand what's working well or what's possible, the art of the possible from a planning perspective, from a budget perspective, from a layout perspective. And by doing this early on, our customers can make informed decisions with our input from day one. It's not I'll come out and see you for free and I'll give you the sales pitch whilst I'm offering planning advice. the sales pitch isn't very good, or maybe it's very good, I don't know. But certainly the planning advice can't be as well considered. And you're making your decision on the rest of your lives in this beautiful house based on someone who's trying to get you to buy their design fees. We just take a step, we take it slow, we do a lot more in the on the research phase than most firms, because they're keen just to rush you into that design phase. So it's a really I brought it in about 7.5 years ago, and we never looked back really. Customers can move forward with confidence from day one. They won't have that I wonder what if thought. They won't want to make changes late in the design process, or even or worse on construction. And we don't commit too early to a design that could have been better or built for less. It is designed for clients who are looking to make meaningful change to their home. If it's a partial garage conversion, as an example, there isn't enough variables to explore, and therefore the needs and options review might not be seen as excellent value, and we want it to be. Therefore, we kind of say, look, it's not a hard and fast rule. We love working in conservation areas on period properties. That's one of my favorite things to do. We like clients who are keen to build environmentally conscious or high energy efficient buildings. And for those areas, we can drop our kind of our lower level of project. But generally speaking, we're looking for that £100,000 build cost, or above. That's the sweet spot for us. That's where this needs and options review comes extremely valuable. There's options to explore. Okay. I'm sorry. Grace has asked, so did you say level 3 includes internal fit out but not wall colors and carpet? That's absolutely right. So let's come to questions. Actually, it's 8 o'clock. I'll just finish this up, and then Grace and David, I'm going to answer your questions. So the needs and options review is low commitment. Once it helps our customers gain clarity before making those bigger decisions. Even like, are you going to carry forward with this project, or are you going to sell, or is Acre Design the right fit for me? Have I enjoyed working with David, Alistair, Kyle, and Josh, and Rebecca, and May at the office? There's no pressure to continue beyond that stage, but we'll understand the project much more in depth. We can give you our best price for our design fees. We can explain more clearly and take the time to tell you about the different service levels we offer, but also offer you meaningful floor plan ideas, meaningful mood boards, and some early stage costings as well as loads of other information as well. It's a small step, but it prevents expensive mistakes later. Cheeky little offer here for the first 4 people who book in the Ask the Expert call and go ahead in June. Goodness me, look at that. That's another typo. Sorry, guys. In August, we'll take £100 off the review. As a very general rule for your pricing, just so you know about the needs and options review, I'm going to take it on a case-by-case basis, because a big detached property is going to take longer than a small property. But generally speaking, if you're working on 1 floor, it's going to be 795 plus VAT. If you're working on 2 floors, it's going to be 995 plus VAT. And if it's working on 3 floors with a loft conversion, it's going to be 1200 plus VAT. But when we're on site, we do a full iMapper scan of your home, and we draw up the existing model on, and you'll get the AutoCAD files for your existing. Now, an architecture practice would charge £1,200 for that anyway, so it's kind of cost neutral, but we're there to understand the project. We're also doing the scan, and as part of the needs and options review, you get those existing drawings, and those drawings can be used by us or anyone else. We don't retain copyright of those existing drawings, but you also get all of the other stuff that I'd explained as well. Cool. If you're planning something small or know exactly what you want, we do have a kind of off-ramp without the needs and options review. We use it occasionally where you tell us what you want, and we can help give you a price on a call for just taking that through planning and building regs. But there's very little input from us. If you want input from us and you want to see our ideas, the needs and options review is a great place to start. If you're absolutely certain on what you want, then I'd be happy to price up for our help on those 3 different service levels. And I think that's probably everything. If you've got any questions about that, then just stick it in the chat. I just wanted to show some of our reviews. I opted for the needs and options review, came up with a number of potential options, which our review together really helped me understand the art of the possible, gave us plenty of opportunity to share with Acre what we were looking for in our project. We completed the needs and options review to explore our options in terms, and we had really impressed with the whole process. We have no clue where to start with our journey, with our extension planning. And we've started the needs and options review. This is something we didn't know we needed. Now we've come to an end. We can fully understand why it's so important. Okay. And again, those kind of reviews go on and on. Okay. I'm going to say thank you for your time. Only 3 minutes over, so that's excellent. I'll unshare my screen and I'll start working through these questions. Level 3, it'll include a flooring plan where we work with you to choose your flooring. It'll include skirting boards, door surrounds, door choices, internal door choices. It'll show internal elevation showing tiling areas. It'll show bespoke electrical. So if you want different switch plates or pendant lights, again, we help create the kind of drawings so that the contractor just refers back to those, and then you get those visuals to see what that actually looks like on the inside. We're not interior designers, so we don't do color palettes of wall colors or curtains or fixed furniture, but we do internal joinery. So if you like, you saw that wall paneling, or you want some storage under the stairs, those kinds of things we can do. I hope that's clear, Grace. Do let me know. If I want to get council confirmation that loft conversion is permitted development, is that a prior approval application, or is there another route to confirm? If you want to get confirmation that a loft conversion is permitted development, then what you need is something called a certificate of lawfulness. And that covers any application that you think is permitted development. And that's the only route. The certificate of lawful development, or CLD, to apply for that, you do need scaled drawings. Now, like I said, your technical drawings with your structural calculations are a development of your planning drawings, and you need those technical drawings for the builders to price from. If you hire a builder without technical drawings, what's the contract based on? What's included, what's not? You know, how do you know, or how does building control know if things are done right? There is a way of applying for building work through something called a building notice, which doesn't need technical drawings, but that was invented for toilets under stairs or very small works, and people use it dangerously, in my opinion. Good architectural drawings, clearly laid out, very detailed and accurate. That is going to save you money. It's not going to cost you money. I understand people see it as a cost, but it's where the inspiration happens. It's where the protection is. It's where the risks are reduced. It's where you get good builders pricing accurately on the same like-for-like basis, and you can have a competitive tender at that point. Kath, like I said, generally speaking, those are the prices, like 795 for a single story. If you're just working on one story, 995 if it's going to be over 2 stories, and then 1200 if it's over 3. You get those options. You get the early stage costing work, and you'll get We'll do the full scan, so it's a full measured survey. And we'll produce the existing drawings in AutoCAD format, ready for us for the design phase, but also we'll issue it to you if you decide to go elsewhere. So it's well worth the money. That needs an options review. Thanks, Grace. I appreciate your comment, and I'm glad you find it useful. That's cool. That's nice. I'm quite needy like that. If you guys have got any nice things to say, then go ahead and just pop it in there. Oh, also, I would really love it if one or two of you, actually, I'd love it if all of you would just go onto Acre Design on Google and leave a little review about the webinar. What did the last guy describe it as? Kind of like warts and all, or something like that. And I was like, oh, it doesn't sound very professional. A couple more questions here. Rebecca. Replanning for a single story rear extension on a semi-detached house that's on the side away from the boundary with the sister house. Yeah, sister property, sister house. Are there any issues to consider about where the windows go, i.e. side windows on extension that look towards the neighbours? Yes. Few things there, and it models between building control and planning. If you've got glazing near a boundary. If there were a fire, it could break out from your house and set fire to next door's. I know it's unlikely, so don't get too scared. But there's a certain size of window that you can have. I think it's up to 1 square meter within 1 meter of the boundary. On the ground floor, if there's a fence in the way, it doesn't need to be opaque. If it's on the first floor, it needs to be opaque. I would just need to take a look at the particulars. But yeah, you could probably get some side-facing windows on the ground floor. You mentioned that easy access keeps the building cost down. Are there likely to be cost implications where the only access is through the garage? I think if your garage is cleared and there's room to set down material at the front of the garage, then it shouldn't be a massive constraint. Imagine you're a new build property on a cul-de-sac and there's no turning circle for a wagon or up a steep hill, and there's nowhere to place material at the front. You're not going to get a concrete wagon to be and the chute to get back. It's a little bit more complicated than just access through a garage. More often than not, 3-bed semis, for example, where there's an adjoining garage at the boundary wall, that's the only access. So if it's nice and clear, it should be fine. Would I consider help if planning has been refused before? I'll take a look for sure. Yeah. I mean, it always begs the question for me when I see something like that. Sorry, Raj. Well, obviously, why was it refused? Did the planning authority allow you the opportunity to negotiate or to do some updated designs, work collaboratively with you? If they didn't, it was probably Northumberland. But they're a tough bunch up there. And but yeah, I could certainly take a look for sure. One more question from Angela, and then I think I will end this call. I should say actually, let me, like I say, there's £100. Oh, those figures I said, there's £100 off those, of course. Let me just. Well, look, you can go onto my website. If you go to the contact us or book an Ask the Expert call, it's going to be me that you're speaking with. You can go ahead and just click that link if you wanted to. That's in the chat now. And one more thing before, if you've appreciated this call and you found it useful, yeah, a little note on this link or Google reviews would be fantastic because it just keeps them ticking over and people. Where is it here? Read reviews. It's all right. If you Google search Acre Design, I'd be very pleased if you could leave us a review. But thank you so much for your time tonight, everybody. Have a lovely evening. And I'm hoping to be speaking with you guys soon. All right. Thanks very much. See you later. Oh, sorry, Angela, you're still here. Could you break things down to design, etc., then decide to go ahead as a later date with the build phase? The longer that you can leave the gap between getting your design finished and building work started, the better, because you don't know how long the design phase is going to take, Angela. Let's say, for example, customers come to me all the time and they're like, we're ready to go as soon as possible. And I was like, when was there a time when you weren't ready as soon as possible? Was there ever a time when you were like, we'll probably build next year or the year after? Because that's the best time to contact us. Planning lasts for 3 years. Get everything in place, have a nice calm design phase, a nice calm wait for the right builder, and then you can crack on at that stage. I would like that. That's a good point. I should add that onto my slides for next time. Thanks for the reminder there. You can talk to me if you want. I can allow the mic or just find that. Oh, thanks very much, Angela. Okay, see you later. Thanks, everybody. Cheerio, Chris. Bye, Angela. Bye bye.